So we're quite pleased that whatever's going to happen within the system right now, without knowing what's going to happen with temperature, will be an improvement to aquatic habitat. And as I said, with respect to the Water Reclamation Center providing these high water levels, the benefit is going to be pronounced in the summer, low flow period. There'll be very little benefit during the higher water levels because essentially the water's already up. But during that low flow period, it's going to mean that these amphibians, reptiles, young fish, minnows, and benthic invertebrates can get into areas where they couldn't get into before. So it just increases the habitat. So. I mentioned the outstanding study. We're waiting on the results with respect to the geomorphology or stream bank erosion. It's the only other one that we're waiting on besides the temperature. The concern obviously there is that if there's a lot of erosion within the system associated with the new discharge, that there could be problems with the dikes and it could destroy habitat. So we're waiting to see what the results are from those studies. So. We've been assured that we'll get them in a relatively timely fashion. I know they're working on them now, but we still haven't got a time of arrival for when they'll show up. But again, we will review that information. We will provide the information out to the public in a transparent fashion. So based on our review right now, staff are not seeing any negative impacts associated with the creation of the new plant, with the exception potentially of the temperature in the winter months. So we are waiting on those 2 additional studies, and we'll be reporting back to you when we get the studies and we've reviewed them and have those results. So be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Questions from committee members? Councillor Eaton.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. That cleared up a lot of issues that I know that I've been hearing for the last basically year and a half that residents and staff and council has been concerned about. Just one question with regards to the water reclamation. There has been discussions about the water being reused for sod farms, farmers, etc. What percentage of that would be used that won't be going into the Holland River? Because we've heard the positive impact of potentially this water going into the river, but if it was if it wasn't going into the river and it was being taken ahead of time, then we wouldn't be seeing these positive impacts.
It's hard to predict at this point. The authority did undertake a study looking at water reuse in 2010. There certainly is a lot of clients that could use the water. And again, you're absolutely right. If we're going to use all the water in the summer periods, then the benefit that we would be see from that water going into the river would be negated somewhat. I can't presume at this point. I think what's going to have to happen is the region is going to have to do a little more work looking at the water reuse option. I know that's in the works for the next stage of the environmental assessment process. And they'll have to actually start going out and contacting some of the landowners to see whether or not they would be willing to actually take the water. They'll have to cost the infrastructure associated with providing that water to them. But in our discussions when we did our study, the Sod Farmers Association, for example, they would be more than happy to have a constant source of water which they could use, and they probably would use it in conditions like we have right now every day. So it could be quite extensive. Currently, a lot of them are drawing water from the rivers or from the ground, and that's not good because they're essentially using that water, and we've had issues with the Maskinaj River actually drying up in the summer because of increased water use and just no rainfall. So there could be a benefit to that local ecosystem by providing the water reuse to those folks.
Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to extend my thanks to the Conservation Authority and to you, Mr. Walters, for being here today and providing this information to us. I think it's been tremendously helpful. I guess my questions are along the lines of what if. The 2 reports that are outstanding, the geomorphology and the report on the ice formation. If those identify issues for the Conservation Authority, what sorts of things could the project team put in place to address them? So, for example, if there will be problems with ice formation, what sorts of things can they do? Can they cool the water before they put it in, or what sorts of things are potential resolutions to those issues?
Through you, Madam Chair, that would be up to the region. That we would be looking at them to mitigate those impacts, number one. They would have to. So if there's no ice formation on the river, if they can't cool the water, then maybe they can provide an alternate snowmobile trail that people would use and sign the area appropriately that it's thin ice. But again, that'll be up to the region as the proponent to actually decide what type of measures they would employ. With respect to the erosion, there's ways in which they can release the water. They can time the release so that it happens and doesn't impact on the geomorphology of the river. Or if the water reuse option goes ahead, definitely, and we'll have to be looking at all the different types of discharge. From 40 million, say that 20 million is being used for water reuse, we'll have to look at what the 20 million will be. So it's hard to speculate at this time until we actually see the data and the results. But we would expect the region to mitigate those impacts, or then we would have to voice our concern at the time when the EA is tabled.
Councillor Morton.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mike. Thank you very much for the presentation. It has cleared up some. I'm certainly sure that there are some questions that probably will still be outstanding. And forgive me, I did go through this report over the weekend and wrote down a number of questions. So if I repeat something that you have already answered, just say I already did that. But the first question I do want, and whether it's you or whether it's Mayor Haxon as our regional rep can answer for me, remind me when the region accepted this as the preferred area, alternative.
I believe it was in 2011 that they had finally announced that it was being conceived as the preferred alternative. Again, the best thing to do would be go back to the proponent, the regional team themselves, and ask that question. But I do believe it was late 2011 that it came forward that this was preferred.
I just couldn't find my notes at home over the weekend, which leads me into another question. The preferred sites, or at least the 4 preferred sites right at the moment, are in an area where we as council have not reviewed our OP yet, and those lands are not in the projected growth plan right now. I mean, we're hoping that at some point they may be. So I guess my question here is, why would those lands be considered, and what is the time frame for the build out of this water reclamation center?
Through you, Madam Chair. The siting of the facility, we have not been involved in any great degree other than to provide the region with the information that we have on hazard lands with respect to the actual locations, the sites. Our biggest concern was the discharge point into the river system. With that said, again, the best person to answer the question would be someone from the region. The build out, you're talking quite a ways into the future. The plant can be phased, and that was one of the benefits of going with this solution versus building the tunnel all the way down to Lake Ontario and the Duffins Creek plant, is that this facility can be phased over time. There's no savings in money, is my understanding. Both facilities cost roughly the same, but this one can be phased based on growth as it occurs, so that they can gear up the plant as more growth comes online. So it could be anywhere, again, I'd be speculating. The time window that we've been told is anywhere from 10 to 50 years before the population builds out. And again, there's the planning issues that have to be resolved first. And certainly that has a lot of impact on when the facility will be constructed.
Thank you.